This morning, we're joined by Justice Kennedy Professor of Law Leslie Jacobs from the University of the Pacific to talk about the legal ramifications of all of this. Thank you so much for your time. Let's start here. A lot of talk has been around, would banning the TikTok app actually violate any part of the First Amendment?
First of all, we need to realize that if Congress passes a law, what it will most likely do is it will authorize the president to take action, potentially banning TikTok, when the president finds facts. And that's important because at least there'll be a reason to do it, and he'll have to provide some evidence. But we still would have potential First Amendment problems, free speech problems. One thing the government can do and has already done is to ban TikTok on government devices. So the government can control its employees and can control its property. But we will run into free speech problems if indeed they enact any sort of ban on TikTok, because TikTok is a foreign corporation, so it doesn't have its own free speech rights. But what we'd be talking about is 150 million Americans who use TikTok to communicate with each other. And so a court would have to look at that.
We've touched on this as well. Some influencers argue that a ban could impact their means of living. Would they have a legal leg to stand on?
The money that they would lose would be less of a concern than the speech that everybody would lose by not having access to TikTok. So that's what a court would have to look at, or what the government would have to do. The president would have to have a very strong reason and show evidence that there's a problem with TikTok, but then it would have to show that this was the necessary means. Banning TikTok, making it so people can't access it, that it would actually be necessary and effective to accomplish the purpose. And with the way that technology works and all the other social media companies that are doing similar type things, that will be a very difficult showing.
So this is not the first Chinese company or international product being banned in the U.S. or potentially being banned in the U.S. Is there a legal aspect that makes banning TikTok tricky? I know you kind of touched on the idea of the users themselves would be the ones who could be, that would have a legal leg to stand on this case.
Yes, because the government, federal government, has the authority to ban foreign corporations in certain circumstances and to ban types of technologies. But the issue here, once again, is that so many people are using this means of communication who are not foreign, they're in the United States. And so an analogy would be if Congress passed a law and said, well, we're concerned about billboards in the United States because they're a traffic hazard, let's ban all billboards. Well, again, there might be a problem with some hazards, but it would make it so many people couldn't communicate by that means. And that's what's going on with TikTok, is that so many people would lose a method of communication. And it's not obvious that there's another one that's comparable.
All right, we'll get you out on this. Would a ban open up loopholes that could negatively impact maybe future software and app creators?
Loopholes. I think what you're talking about is that the method of banning would be to say that the app stores can't sell the app.
Correct.
And so I don't know if you're talking about workarounds. I mean, technology
Sure.
is a problem here too, because you ban apps, there are other ways to get access to TikTok. So that is a reason why the law, even if it did pass, or even if the president did do it in a big, broad form, it seems unlikely that it would be able to accomplish its purpose.
Leslie Jacobs, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.